Okay, so today we're going to talk about how to start drawing in AutoCAD, but we're going to do it in a way that we use coordinates to draw. So this is more of, if I were to compare this to architecture or engineering, this is a little bit more of an engineering type input. Okay, so all you engineers get very excited about that, right? All the architects are like, I just want to draw a line, show me how to click, show me a picture, more like it. So we're going to talk about that today. One thing I do want to show you guys is I want to show you where to find the files that I'm going to be using today. And hopefully my S drive, I didn't check it, which I probably should have. But I'm going to go to what we call the CAD Common drive. Okay, and that's where a lot of the files that we use in this course are stored. Now, if you need any files for an assignment, I will try and post them in that overview document, or in the assignment. So if I say open this file and do this assignment, I will put that file in the assignment so that you have access to it. Okay. I do understand that most of you work from home, and the files are here, and if you forget to take them with you, then you're kind of stuck, right? So I'm going to do that. The location where these files are on our server is called CAD Common. And I'm going to go to this PC. CAD Common is this drive right here. And I need to remember to tell Jameson it looks like it's full. It may not be. So if I double click there, okay, you'll see a bunch of stuff. We probably need to clean it out. But if you go to Arch and you go to 1310, okay, and you go to, there's drawings, there's tutorial videos, and I will post some of these tutorial videos in the overview when you need them as well, okay. I'm going to go to drawings, and there's just a bunch of drawings in here. And essentially, these are really just what we're going to use to do in-class exercises, okay? So, let's see. Coordinates. This looks like it's been Grips, Kitchens, Layers. This one's been... I'm going to cheat for a second. I'm going to go to Jeff's. His is probably more organized. Coordinates. There we go. It's in a file folder. There we go, coordinates. Okay, so the files that we're going to be using today are under the coordinates file folder. So absolute, we're going to go over direct, we're going to go over relative and polar. Yes, okay. So like I said, again, these files are open for you to use. If you want to use your zip drive, plug it in and make a copy of these files so you can take them all home with you. Totally fine to do, right? But feel free to access these anytime, okay? So when I open up a file, it's going to be from here, and I'll tell you which one I'm going to open up when I do open it, okay? All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about how AutoCAD is organized, okay? So I'm going to just click on Start Drawing here, and I'm going to open up a blank drawing file. And what you're going to see in this blank drawing file immediately is this gridded system that's happening, right? So how many of you know what the Cartesian coordinate system is? Does anybody even remotely? Yeah? Come on, you guys are all engineers, right? Nobody wants to admit it. Okay, so the Cartesian coordinate system, let's see if we can just maybe Google a picture of it instead of me drawing one so that it's a little bit easier. Okay, perfect. Here's a great image of it. Okay, so this is what the Cartesian coordinate system looks like, and it is an XY system. Let's see if we can get a big picture. There, that's what we want to see. Okay, and I'm showing you this because this is how AutoCAD is organized. Okay, this means this is how AutoCAD locates things within its system. All right, and it does it using the Cartesian coordinate system, and things are located in AutoCAD according to numbered pairs. Okay, and those pairs can have an X and a Y and possibly a Z coordinate. Okay, So in the Cartesian coordinate system, we have 0, 0. Okay, we have point 0, 0. That's called the origin. All right, and we have x moving over here to the right. That means x is in the positive direction. We have y moving in this upward direction. The upward direction of y is the positive direction. If you move downward in the same direction, it's a negative y direction. Okay, and if you move to the left, it's a negative x direction. Okay, so for example, if I have a point right here, all right, to locate that point within the system, we are 1, 2 in the x direction, and we are 1, 2, 3 in the y direction. The first numeral here, the first number here, is always going to be your x coordinate. And if your x coordinate is 0, there will be a 0 there, okay? So this is your x coordinate and this is your y coordinate, all right? So if I go back to AutoCAD and look here, you see we have, this is our origin. Do you see where our user coordinate system is located? Okay, that indicates our origin, so that's point 0, 0. And anything from here over to here, right? This is kind of our positive quadrant right here, okay? Anything over here is going to be a positive y or a positive x location, right? And anything over here is going to be a negative x and a positive y. And anything down here will be a, let's see, we have a negative x and a negative y, okay? Anything really down here, essentially. Or no, this is a positive x, sorry, and a negative y, okay? So that's what we're looking at here. We have this grid. Okay, when I zoom in, you can kind of see this grid. It's sort of an implied grid. I can't really, like if I wanted to locate my cursor by clicking, it's somewhat hard for me to locate like this intersection right here of this grid just by using my mouse, okay? So what I'm gonna do today is show you how to access kind of these intersection points just by using a coordinate input, okay? I'm telling you how AutoCAD is organized just so you know, so that it makes sense, okay? I don't really, when I draft daily in AutoCAD, I don't think about this very often, right? I don't think I'm moving in the positive x direction and the positive y direction, and my ordered pair is 1, 4, right? I want you to know this, and I think it's important, and we will spend a little bit of time on it, and I'll show you how it functions so that in the future, if you have to work that way, you know how to, okay? But in general, methods that we learn in about a week or so are going to kind of be used a little bit more than this system, okay? So don't worry, get too worried if you think this is highly mathematical and it's going to be very tough. This is really going to be the only topic that's like this. And then we're going to move on, and you're going to understand how AutoCAD is organized, and the world will be wonderful, okay? Okay, so this is what our system looks like. This is our origin, and we know that we have an x and a y direction, okay? So one thing that I'm going to do very quickly here is I'm going to turn on, I'm going to come down here to my Object Snap toolbar down here. I'm going to click on this little Customization tab, and I am going to turn on Coordinates, okay? So I turn that on, and then you notice down here at the bottom, I have these numbers. I have an x coordinate showing right here. I have a y coordinate, and I have a z coordinate. You see, x, y, z, and they're separated by commas. Okay, so as I move my cursor around, do you see how those numbers change? Right? Do you see how the y is a negative 3.8999? And when I move up here now, it's positive, right? So me moving my cursor around and having this coordinates, I don't know, command on, I guess. Oh, did somebody have a question? Or was that Jameson out there making noise? It was Jameson. He's whining about how he hit his lip on something this weekend, or yesterday. It's funny. Well, it's not really funny, but it kind of is. So you'll see that as I move my mouse around, right, my cursor is being located in the model space coordinate system here, and this is kind of showing it, okay? All right, so let's talk about how we start to draw in AutoCAD and how we use our coordinate systems to do that, okay? I'm going to open up, let's see, we want to do absolute coordinates first. And so I'm going to go back to my coordinates file here, and I'm going to open up the absolute coordinates file. Click, click. Okay. And as you open it, it might say, somebody else has this open, or would you like to open it read only? And you can just say yes, that's totally fine. Just open it up, okay? And this is what we see when we open up that absolute coordinates drawing, all right? And I'm gonna use this to show you how to draw using absolute coordinates, okay? And again, we'll learn how to do this, but this won't kind of be the main way that we function in AutoCAD. In the future, we're going to be using a lot of our drawing commands up here to function in AutoCAD, which makes it a lot easier to use, okay? So the term absolute in AutoCAD means that when you input something, it's measured from the origin. That's what that means, okay? So if I look at this user coordinate system icon right here as the origin, point 0, 0, right? Any input that I input as an absolute coordinate will be measured from that point. So if I input an ordered pair that is 1, 1, it's going to be located right here because that is up in the y direction 1 and over in the x direction 1, okay? And that's measured from this point, all right? So absolute coordinates are measured from the origin, all right? So how do I input an absolute coordinate, okay? I'm going to input an absolute coordinate. I'm going to click on the line command, okay? But I'm not going to actually use the line command to draw. I'm going to put some ordered pairs in. And to make this system work, I'm going to type 1, 1, enter. 1, 1, enter. All right? So something I want to distinguish in AutoCAD, all right? And right now, I'm just going to point a couple things out. I have my units set in decimal units. We're going to leave that alone for now. But when I type 1 and I just hit enter in AutoCAD, that assumes that 1 is, it's going to be entered in the default unit, okay, that is existing in AutoCAD here. And right now our current unit is in decimal, but you will all change yours to architectural and we'll work in that format for most of the semester. So the inch is the default unit in AutoCAD. So if I type 1, enter, 1 inch is going to be entered, okay, or whatever default unit is current here. So in this case, it's decimals, okay. Another thing that you're going to notice, you see all this stuff on the screen. This is called a dynamic input, right? And I may have said this in our previous class, but this dynamic input where all of this garbage is on the screen, it started happening maybe 8 years ago or so, and it just was an upheaval in architecture, the community, right? Everybody just didn't know what to do with themselves because of this terrible stuff on the screen happening. So I'm going to have you guys turn it off for a minute, okay? I'm going to hit escape, right? To break a command, we hit escape. I'm going to remind you that I can zoom in by using the middle roller button on my mouse, and I can zoom out using the middle roller button on my mouse, right? I push the roller away from me, and I zoom in. I pull the roller back, and it zooms out, okay? I can pan back and forth by holding my middle roller button down and moving my mouse. Okay, zoom in, zoom out, middle roller. Okay. I'm going to turn my dynamic input off, and I want you to do this as well. So like I said, we're going to work a little bit on this assignment next Wednesday in class, and you're going to have to do this. You may as well do this at home on your AutoCAD because I'll have you do it for the assignment. But I'm going to click on this little customization tool here, and I'm going to turn on dynamic input. Okay, click. And you see down here, this little dynamic input icon turned on, that's what it is. It's a little plus, and it looks like a ruler, but it's actually a little input box, okay? So when I turn it off, it grays out, and when I turn it on, it's blue. And the difference between those two things is this. Do you see how I don't really have anything like was happening before happening? And when I turn it back on, now do you see all that stuff is back, right? That's the dynamic input stuff, okay? So I'm just going to turn dynamic input off for now. Okay. So I'm going to enter that first point again using absolute coordinates, and just a reminder, absolute coordinates are measured from the origin. So I'm going to click on line. Okay. I could also initiate the line command by typing L enter. It's a shortcut, L enter. Enter is, it initiates a command. So if I type L, you see down here at the command line, it pops up. Okay. I'm inputting at the command line with the keyboard, or I can come up here and I can click on an icon. Okay. L, enter. All right, now down here at the command line, and this is something you'll have to get used to. Now, this will be at the command line with dynamic input turned off, but with dynamic input turned back on, it will be at your cursor, okay? So it says specify your first point. In this case where I'm not clicking to specify my first point, I'm putting in a coordinate. I'm going to type 1, 1, enter. Great. Okay. So 1, 1. Exactly. She's catching on. What was your name again? Callie. Okay, I'm going to try and get to know everybody's names. So Callie's caught on. She's like, wait a minute. This one over here is 4, 1. So now it says down here at the command line, specify your next point. Well, okay. 4, 1, enter. And it's starting to work. You probably got yours all done, right? Yeah. So my third point here is 4, 2, enter. My next point here is 8, 2, enter. Okay, now what happens if something goes wrong, right? What if I accidentally hit escape? Oh my gosh, I hit escape, it breaks the command, you panic, right? You're like, oh my gosh, it's not going to work now, right? That's not true. We can just start where we left off, right? We know where this point is located. We know that it's at 8, 2. So I can type L enter, and I can type 8, 2, enter, and it starts back up. Okay? What happens if I accidentally click and I'm like, oh, great, points off? No, just kidding. What happens if I want to get rid of that line? Okay, let me talk about how you can delete a few things, all right? So I'm going to hit escape. Escape gets you out of any command. We talked about that. I'm going to pan over, right? We're going to start using these commands all together. So you are initiating a command, you're executing a command, you're drawing, you're zooming in, you're zooming out, you're panning back and forth, right? But what if I want to get rid of this line that I accidentally have created? Okay, there's a couple ways. If this was the last command that I had done, I can hit undo. Okay, undo on the keyboard is Control-Z. I also have the ability to come up here and click undo right here. Okay, so click, it undoes it. Okay, and the undo is, it works consecutively, and it backs up. So I can undo a lot of commands up until it has saved, right? If it's saved, it will probably stop the undo command right there, like won't let you go back past a save, but I can undo several commands to get back to where I needed to be, okay? So I can hit undo right here. I can also hit redo, okay? So if I undid one command too many and I want to redo it, I can redo it. I can hit undo on the keyboard, U enter. Okay, or I can type UNDO, undo, enter. I can type redo, REDO, enter on the keyboard, and it will redo a command. Okay, so we have undo, we have redo, and then I can just delete something. All right, so deleting something will require me to pick the object that I want to delete. So if I want to delete this, I can hover over it, I can click, and that selects it, and I can hit delete on the keyboard. Okay, I'm going to undo that real quick so we can do it a couple of different ways, right? This is called a pick. Click, delete. It's a pick. A pick, click, click, click. Oh, I just gave away the secret. Click of what's coming next. Okay, pick will allow you to pick things singly. So if I want to, delete 3 things, I can click, click, click on them and hit delete, and it will delete all of them. All right. The nice thing about AutoCAD, and this is opposite in Revit, is that if I hit escape here, I can pick one. I can click on a second object, and it keeps the first selection and picks the second selection. Okay. Revit doesn't do that. If I pick on one and then I pick on another, it unselects the previous one and just selects the current one. Okay. So I can click, click, and I can hit delete. There's a couple of other selection methods in AutoCAD you need to know about. We have the lasso, which I don't really like, but I'll show you. And then we have selection windows, all right, and they function a little bit differently. So if you click in space, right, space meaning the black area here, if I click and I hold my mouse button down and I move, you guys have probably already done this. This is the lasso. I am not a fan of the lasso. The lasso is somewhat new, right? I feel like it's just, it's wild. It's very wild. And the lasso, whatever you touch with a green lasso, do you see how I'm moving clockwise or counterclockwise, right? Or I guess it doesn't matter. This one doesn't have a blue one. Never mind. So whichever direction I move, whatever I touch with that green lasso is selected. Great. I think what you'll start finding as you move forward in AutoCAD is that this is just not a very precise way of capturing things. And that's why I don't like it. So I just tend not to use it. It's nice if you're kind of wanting to bob and weave around and grab things, right? Great. You can use it if you want. Escape, escape. Okay, so click and hold, bob and weave around here. Whatever you touch is going to be selected. Okay. Oh, I missed something. There we go. And I hit delete and it goes away. I'm going to hit undo, Control Z, and it comes back. Okay. I also have, so I have the pick, I have the lasso, and then I have two selection window types. Okay. I have a green selection window and I have a blue selection window. So the green selection window happens when I click in space and I let go of the mouse button and I move my mouse down into the bottom left. Okay. You'll notice that anything I touch is highlighted. Do you see that? So as I touch, even if I don't touch the entire object, like I'm just touching the edges of this point, anything I touch is highlighted. Okay, so when I click, all of those objects are selected and I can delete or do whatever I need to do. Okay, escape. That is different than a blue selection window. A blue selection window starts at the bottom left, click and let go of your mouse button, move your mouse upward to the top right, even ever so slightly, right? I'm not really moving up, but I'm moving over and it's still blue, right? And down, see that? But if I move this direction, it turns green. See that? So if I move in the blue direction, do you notice that as I touch this line, it doesn't select, right? And as I touch that line, it doesn't select. The way the blue selection window works is it will only select things that you encompass in their entirety. So until I have this whole line, see the second that whole line enters that blue selection window, then it selects. So you'll see me using the blue selection window a lot. And I like it because I can be very selective of what I want to get, right? If there's a million lines in a drawing and I only want to select 3 of them, the blue selection window will allow me to come into a very tight area, click, let go, and just grab one thing at a time, right? Instead of the green selection window where I grab a bunch of things and maybe some things I don't even realize I've grabbed and I delete them and then there's a problem, okay? So I hit escape to deselect. I zoom out a little. I'm going to select this line. I could pick it, delete, right? I could select it with the green selection window, delete. I could select it with a blue selection window, delete, or I could lasso it. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? Selection will make your life very easy or very difficult. So get used to it. We'll say get used to it, right? Try different ways. Don't be afraid. Selection also is, it's I guess, cumulative again, right? So as I select this, I can pick a couple things. I can pick a couple more things. I can pick a couple more things, right? And I can delete them if I need to. Okay? I can select anything in AutoCAD. Numbers, letters, lines, blocks, dimensions, as we get to them, right? I can select anything in AutoCAD, and I can manipulate almost anything in AutoCAD, okay? So I made a mistake, I click on it, I hit delete, and I move forward. 8, 2 is my next ordered pair, right? So to draw this, I'm gonna type, click on my line command up here, and I'm gonna click 8, 2, enter. Great. The next one is 8, 4, enter. 1, comma 4, enter, 1, comma 1, enter, and we're done. Escape. Okay? Any questions on any of that? Yep.
My computer's been doing kind of weird, like when after I type in the command, it makes it so when the next command I put in is relative to the net from that point.
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to figure out how to turn that setting off.
It's probably, do you have your dynamic input turned on?
It's turned off, but whenever I make a line, it still has the angles on it.
Yeah, I think you're relative. Let's see, go click on that again. And turn on, but that's just the button, so then you turn the button off.
Oh. I
think that's what's happening. Yeah, dynamic input will interfere. It kind of just picks the best method, if that makes sense. Now, again, we're doing this, and it's not tough to do, but it's like, oh gosh, this is painstaking. And we're going to learn a lot easier way to do it, right? I never do this. Maybe like once a year. What's that? I mean, it's kind of fun. You know, you'll have some exercises where you generate things doing this. And are any of you mechanical engineers, like nuts and bolts engineers, product engineers? Okay, so you guys will do this type of stuff, right? Like when you are creating a product or you're inputting something into some type of technology and it's very specific, this is a good way to get a very accurate outline of something, right? And a good way of putting it, you know, if you're trying to cut something out or laser cut something, right? Which, by the way, we have. Do you guys know we have a laser cutter in the building? Just FYI. That uses AutoCAD to cut, right? Anyway. And we're getting a new 3D printer in a couple weeks, hopefully, that will use some of this technology. But this will help you get, you know, products onto whatever location you need on a piece of material to cut it out, right? So that's the kind of thing that this is really good for, essentially. All right, so that's absolute coordinates, right? You're going to have some exercises, and let me show you some of the old ones. I'm not really sure what's going to be updated, but I will show you. Let's see. Kind of what your exercises are going to look like. Let me just download. Okay, so, no, not Drive. Okay, so your assignment might look something like this, right? Where you are given a set of coordinates, just like we're doing on screen, right? And you're going to create this object. You're going to start at 1, 1 and just kind of work your way all the way around until you create this shape. Okay? All right. Any questions on absolute coordinates? Good. Good. Okay, so the next type of coordinate system we're going to talk about is relative coordinate systems. Okay, so I'm going to open up this relative coordinate file. It's in that same folder. Everybody gets the little, just hit yes. Okay. So this is the same shape, but we're going to input a little bit different, okay? So absolute coordinates are measured from the origin, and relative coordinates are measured from the point that was generated previously, all right? So with this exercise, we're going to use a little bit of the absolute coordinate system methodology, right, input, and we're also going to use relative coordinates. So the first input here will still be 1, 1, right? Because we want to start here. And this is really kind of, if you want to talk in terms of relative coordinates, this is really in terms of, it's relative to the origin. So that was the previous input. So to start this exercise, and sometimes you have to think about it. I don't always get it right either, right? But we're going to initiate the line command, whether or not we click on the line command up here or we type L enter, okay? So I'm going to click on, the line command. And down here at the command line, right, if you get lost in a command and you forget what you need to do next, it says specify the first point. Well, what we're going to do here is we're going to type 0, 0, enter. Oh, nope, that's not true. I jinxed myself. 1, comma 1, enter. Okay. So I type 1, comma 1, and I have my first point ready to go. Now this one over here, this point here is still located at 4, 1, but if I type 4, comma 1, I will get to that point, okay? But in fact, what I really want to do is I want to input the next point relative to my last point, okay? And you're probably thinking, well, why would I use that input when, you know, I know where these pairs are. I have the coordinates, right? It makes sense to do it like I did the last exercise. And that's true, right, in this instance. But what really happens when you're drafting in AutoCAD, I very rarely locate, you know, my first click point somewhere that I know in AutoCAD. I just start clicking away, right? I'm like, I'm going to start here. I'm going to draw my floor plan. I'm going to do whatever I need to do. And so I don't really know where a lot of my stuff exists in AutoCAD, if that makes sense, right? I just open up AutoCAD and I start drawing. I don't think, I'm going to start at 0, 0, and I'm going to draw to 1, 1, and that, unless I'm doing something, you know, that needs that. I just start drawing, okay? So the point of this relative input is that I don't always know where, you know, my stuff is in AutoCAD, but I know different lengths or different, you know, dimensions I need to generate, okay? So what that means is, like, if I'm out here in space and I click, I don't really know where I'm at, right, per se. I could figure it out, but I do know that maybe I want to move this direction and I want to go 1 unit, right? So I could type at, see the at symbol? The at symbol indicates this is a relative coordinate input, okay? And that means that AutoCAD doesn't care where you're at in the model space drawing area. It just knows that from whatever point was clicked first, it's going to measure from that point, all right? So I can type at 1, comma 1, enter. Well, it did something funny there. Anyway, something funny happened. Oh no, that's right. Over 1, up 1. Sorry, wasn't thinking. So it did what it needed to do, okay? So I measured, let's do a line. 1, enter, 1, enter. Do you see how it went 1, 1, and there we go, okay? So again, the point of a relative input is to measure off the point that you just previously created, okay? So in this case, when I input my little shape here, I'm going to start with an absolute input. So I'm going to type, click on L for line up here. And I'm going to type 1, comma 1, enter. And then I'm going to start my relative input. And to remember how to input relative, you're going to look up here and remember there's an at symbol in front of it, okay? So this one right here, this point is actually 1, 2, 3 in the X direction, but how many in the Y? 0. Yeah, 0. It's not moving up or down, right? So it's directly over. So this relative input would be at, the X coordinate is 1, 2, 3, 3, comma 0, because I'm not moving up or down. Enter. Okay, so my next input here as a relative input would be at, in the X direction, what's that? 0, exactly. Yep, would be 0, comma 1. There we go, right? And this one would be 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to type at 4, comma 0. Enter. You guys get the idea, right? So you could finish going all the way around here. Now, I'm going to cheat a little. Okay. Now we get to this point here. Okay. When you're creating an absolute input, there's two things that sort of affect it, right? So I can come over here and I can type at. So in the X direction, it's 0, comma. In the Y direction, this is negative 1, 2, 3, negative 3. Enter. Do you see that? Do you understand why that worked? Because the X direction, when I move downward, we're moving, or sorry, in the Y coordinate, when I'm moving in the downward direction, it's negative. Okay? Now there's a couple of things that affect this. If you noticed, I'm going to hit Control Z. If my cursor position really affects how things are input in AutoCAD, okay? So sometimes if you have your cursor up here, but you're trying to move in the negative direction, okay, you're for sure going to have to type in the negative symbol to make it move downward, because the mere fact that I have my cursor moving in the positive Y direction, if I just type like 3, okay, it will move in the upward direction, right? The position of my cursor in AutoCAD really helps me function and move around, if that makes sense. So we're going to be doing what's called a direct input pretty soon, and what that means is that I move in the direction I want to go. I type a number and it goes that direction, okay? But even if I'm not doing a direct input, the position of my cursor still really kind of overrides a lot of things. So I'm just going to tell you that, okay? So if I'm moving in this direction, I may not have to type negative because my cursor is moving in the negative direction. So I'm going to try that out. I'm going to type at, and in the X direction, we're doing 0, comma, 1, 2, 3, 3, enter. Oh, no, it didn't work that time. See, it went the opposite direction because I typed 3. It went positive Y 3 units instead of negative. Okay, so if you are doing these assignments and a line goes the wrong way, hit escape, hit Control Z. Oh, I undid all of it. I don't want to do that. I'm going to hit redo. That brought it all back, right? Don't panic. I'm going to click on this and I'm going to hit delete. Okay. Okay, so we have our absolute coordinates measured from the origin. We have our relative coordinates measured from the point previous. The next one I'm going to talk about, I'm going to skip a couple of these and I'm going to talk about direct input. Okay. And let's see, do we have another file for that one? I think we do. Direct coordinates. Click, click. There we go. Oh, somebody saved this file. Delete. It's okay, we can practice deleting, right? Delete, delete, delete. There we go. Okay. All right. So the next thing we have is our direct entry. Okay. This is really going to be 99.9% of the way that you draft in AutoCAD, okay? Just because it's so simple, right? So the direct entry method, this way I'm going to come up here, I'm going to click on the line tool, okay? Or I can come down to the command line and type L enter. And I'm really, instead of using these ordered pairs to start my command, which I could, right? I could do that. I'm just going to click where I want my lines to go. So I'm going to click, I'm going to move in the direction I want to go. And instead of typing an ordered pair, I just want to go 1, 2, 3 units this direction. Okay, do you see how my line is straight? If I move my cursor this direction with direct input, it will input in the direction I have my cursor. So if my mouse, if I slightly move it upwards and I type 3, enter, it creates a line 3 units long in the direction I'm pointing. All right, Control Z, undo. 3, enter. No, that's not what I want. Control Z. Okay. I'm going to move in the direction I want to go, and we're going to learn about some things called object snaps that will help us do this a little bit better in the next coming weeks. But do you notice as I approach a straight line, do you see how that dashed green line starts to happen? And you feel that line pop into a straight orthogonal type manner, right? So as you're moving your mouse, you'll feel that happen. All right, and when you see that polar, see it says polar and 0 degrees, and I see that green line happen, right, that extension, I know that if I type in a length measurement right now, I will get a perfectly straight line in the direction I want that to go. So I have 1, 2, 3 units I want to go, 3, enter. I can even move past the next point I need to go, because this one, I snap, right? And I could type 1, enter, right? You'll see me do that a lot. I move in the direction I want to go, and then I'll type 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4 units, enter, right? Move in the direction I want to go, 2, enter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7, enter. 1, 2, 3. 3, enter. Okay. Now you're thinking, well, why didn't I have to type -3? The reason I didn't have to type -3 in this case is because the direction of my mouse overrode the fact that I just typed 3 in the Y direction. Okay. So this is the way that really we're going to be drafting in AutoCAD, unless you need to be highly, highly specific, right? This is the way that we're going to be doing this, okay? And you can see this is really easy. Does that make sense to everybody? Hopefully, yes. Everybody seems to be drawing their little shapes. Good. Okay. You're like, move on, please. Move on. All right. So we have our absolute coordinates. We have our relative coordinates. We have our, this is the direct entry method. I want to talk about our polar inputs. So we'll talk about polar inputs next. I'm going to open up another file here. So we'll go to polar coordinate. Click, click. Okay. And I'm going to be really honest with this and say that this is probably one of my least used coordinate system inputs ever. It's fine. I understand it. I can input this direction, but it makes me think a lot, and I don't really like thinking with AutoCAD. I want AutoCAD to do the thinking for me, right? And so I will tend to use my polar object snaps to help me do this kind of input rather than have to think about how to make it work, if that makes sense, okay? It sounds lazy, but I would prefer to use the software to think, right? So essentially, what a polar coordinate input will allow you to do is create a diagonal line, right? And so we're going to do that, okay? But another way, let me just say this, the way that I prefer to create diagonal lines in AutoCAD, instead of thinking about what angle this is at, I actually like to use our polar tracking. Do you see my mouse down here? I have an object snap that's called polar tracking, okay? And if it's blue, it's turned on. If I click on it and turns gray, it turns off. Blue on, gray off. There's a little arrow next to it, and if I click on that, you'll see 90, 180, 270, right? I have kind of these groupings of different angle increments. So if I click on 45, 90, 135, let me show you what this does. At every 45-degree angle, I get a snap. Do you see that? And if I click, I get a perfect 45-degree angle. 45, 0, 45, 90. You see that happening? 135, 180, 225, okay? If I come down here and I click this to the 10-degree increment, right? I get 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, right? I skipped 70, 70, 80, 90. You guys get the idea, okay? So using this polar tracking down here will allow me essentially to create this same input here, but without having to think about the angles, right? And I like that. So very rarely do I use this just because the polar tracking, it's dynamic, it's always turned on, I don't have to think about it, and it's easy to use. Okay, but I am going to show you this just because we do have a couple of, mechanical nuts and bolts engineers, right? I say that because we also have HVAC mechanical engineers who do use air or create air systems, right? Design air systems, I guess I should say. Okay, so let's talk about polar coordinate system. The input for a polar coordinate system is I am going to, let me just, one quick second. I want to pull something up so you can see the actual input. Oh no, where did it go? Hold on. I have it here. There we go. Sorry guys, I don't think I have the graphic I'm looking for. I want to show you what it is. Polar. Okay, so this is going to be the, we'll say the syntax of what you're going to be inputting. And I'm going to write this on the board as well. Okay, So it's a relative input, which means that, oh, maybe I can't, yeah. Which means that it's going to be relative to the point previous that you have generated. Okay, oh, look, somebody's already been kind of talking about it here. Okay. So we're going to see the at symbol here, all right? And then we're going to input these numbers here. This is a length right here. This is at an angle of 45 degrees, all right? So we're going to have at, and this is going to be a measurement. And then we're going to have the at an angle of, that's a symbol on the keyboard, 45. It doesn't have a D anymore, does it? Nope, we don't have to put the D anymore. You used to have to put a D in there for degrees. So at, the measurement is here, and then this is 45, this is the degree. That's going to be a habit I'm going to have to break, not putting a D at the end of it. Well, I don't use it anyway. This is the polar tracking, okay? So the way that this functions is, if I want to create an angle, so I'll do L for line, enter. So I did it down here. You didn't even see me do it, did you? L for line, enter. Okay. Enter in AutoCAD, you can hit the enter key, or you can also hit the space bar. All right. It's a habit you're going to have to really get used to, or habit to break. In AutoCAD, if you start typing in a command and you think like polar coordinates and you hit a space, the space will act as a return, as an enter, okay? And it will execute the command. So if I type L space bar, that's the same as typing L enter, which is L execute the command, okay? So L enter to initiate the command, L space bar, okay? So I'm going to click, and to create a polar input, I'm going to type at, and let's say my distance is 15, at an angle of, so shift, and it's the comma key, shift and the comma key, I get the angle of 45, enter. All right, so from this point here, I got a 45 degree angle and it's 15 units long. All right, so that's what a polar input will do. So this, for example, this right here, let's delete some of these things out. Click delete all those, all right? One thing you want to remember, so again, we're going back to, I don't know if this is really the Cartesian coordinate system so much as knowing angles, right? 0 is over to the right, 90 is upwards, 180 is to the left, 270 is down, 0. Back to 360, right? So this is how our angles function, okay? And we have what's called the right-hand rule, all right? Really, I guess a better way of saying it is that counterclockwise is positive, okay? So if I type in 45, enter, it's going to move this direction as opposed to negative, which would be clockwise, okay? So counterclockwise is positive, clockwise is negative, okay? So if I type in something like 15 at an angle of negative 45, right? The negative 45 will move down in this quadrant as opposed to that quadrant, okay? There's two ways of inputting angles, I think you're going to find in that manner, right? So if I want to hit 45 degrees, I could type in at, 45 degrees. Or I could type in, what is 360 minus 45, right? 315. I could also type in at an angle of negative 315 degrees, right? Because that's the same thing, just in the opposite direction, okay? Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so if I wanted to create these, I'm going to do a combination of inputs here. So I'm going to type in L for line, enter. And then it says specify the first point. So we will do 1, 1, enter. That was an absolute input, right? Now I'm going to create a, sorry, let me close this over here. There we go. I'm going to create a relative input now. So to get to this point, I'm going to create a relative input. I'm going to type at. In the x direction, we're going 1, 2, 3. In the y direction, we're going 0. Enter. And now to get to this point right here, here's why I don't really like using polar input. I somewhat have to guess at the angle. I'm guessing that's a 45-degree angle, right? Which I know it is, okay? But if I didn't hit it, I'd have to redo the angle. So this is 1 unit, right? That's 1 unit. Might be, I was going to say it's a little longer than that, right? 1 point, what was it? 1.41, okay? So this is going to be, oh, does it give me a dimension? Okay, there we go. Like, let's talk about some math. See, when they say you'll never use math, that's not true. Right there, you could have calculated that. So it's 1.41. So to hit that node right there using a polar input, I'm going to type at 1.41, right? At 1.41 at an angle of 45 degrees. And you can see my input down here on the command line. At 1.41 at an angle of 45 degrees. Enter. And it works. Okay. Then I'm going to direct input. I'm like, hey, I don't really want to input any more of these pairs, so I'm just going to move this direction and type 1, 2, 3. 3, enter. 1, 2. 2, enter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, enter. Okay, now where am I at here? What is that? 225, right? See my polar input telling me 225? I'm very tempted just to type in the dimension. 1.41. Move in that direction and type 1.41, which I could have, right? But we'll do another polar input. I'm going to type at 1.41 at an angle of 225. Enter. Oh, 1.41. What did I do? Oh, did I do that again? Okay, let's see. At 1.41 at an angle of 225. Enter. Okay. 225 was the positive, right? So from here all the way to there is 225. But I also could have done a negative angle that was this direction. What was that? 90 plus 135? Is it 135? 1 plus 45? Yeah, 135. Okay. I've hit escape. I've gotten out of my command. To reinitiate that, I'm just going to type L, enter. Okay. This is, in the x direction, it's 1, 3. Let's type that. 1, comma 3, enter. I'm back where I need to be. 1, 2, 2, enter, and I'm back there. And I've got my shape. Okay. Okay, so that's how we're going to create polar coordinates. All right. And I think, you know, really my point of view on this is, so you're going to get some exercises where you have to do this, obviously, right? And well, I'll let you figure it out. I'm just going to say you can use whatever methods you want to create these shapes, okay? I feel like if you're smart enough to figure out a better method, then more power to you, right? You know, you're going to be given these exercises that say use polar coordinates or use relative coordinates or use absolute coordinates, right? But if you figure a better way to do it, then that's fine with me as well, okay? So likely you'll probably get 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm thinking about 5 assignments that you're going to have to do. And I will post those as soon as I get the updated booklet. But I can generally show you what they're going to look like. Let's see, where did those go? Here we are. Okay, but they're generally going to look like this, where you start here, you get a starting point, and then you're going to go A, B, you're just going to move in this direction in whatever way you can, right, given these ordered pairs. Does that make sense to everybody? And we'll start these when we meet next Wednesday, okay? Hello. Okay, okay. So we'll start these, okay? And like I said, I'll post those when I get our updated manual, because I'm not sure, wouldn't suspect he's going to update those, but he might, okay? All right, so final thing we're going to talk about, dynamic input, okay? And dynamic input is really just inputting all of these different methods on the screen, essentially. So I'm going to open up, I believe we have a dynamic, do we? Dynamic coordinate, there we go, click, click. Okay, so here we are. So dynamic input, number one, I want you to know how to turn it on and off. And this is a topic that you'll forget how to do. And so, obviously it's on the video now, how to turn it on and off. So I'm going to have you do that. But to turn the dynamic input, just the button that you then, selectively turn on and off, to get the button to show up in your menu here, you're going to go all the way down to these three lines and click on them. And dynamic input is right there. Okay. So you click and you turn it off. See, the little button goes away and comes back. Okay, a check mark by it, and dynamic input is turned on. All right. So dynamic input is this little guy. It's grayed out right now. So what that means is that when I draw, I have an object snap turned on, but I don't have the dynamic input turned on. Okay. If I click on it, it turns on. L for line. Right. There's my dynamic input. Okay, and what's nice about the dynamic input is that do you see the blue number? That's the length. So if I type 5, you see that the length changes. If I press tab, you see it says 71 degrees. I could type 100 degrees, enter. That's dynamic input. Okay, so really the way that you control dynamic input is using the tab command. And I can also use some of the other language, like a relative input within that. So L for line, I can click, move in the direction I want to go, and you see 5.1039. I could type 5, enter, and the dynamic input is really just kind of guiding me visually on there, right? So now if I wanted to do an angled line, let's say at 50 degrees, I could type 3, tab, and it jumps over to the angle, 50, enter. Okay, and it just keeps going. It's just a really nice, fast way to do everything in one place, essentially, right? And AutoCAD, it's really about your comfort. So honestly, and it sounds funny, right? AutoCAD is about your comfort. But whatever method you're more comfortable with, feel free to use, right? So, when I started using AutoCAD, we didn't have dynamic input, so I'm not as comfortable with it. For me, when there's a big drawing on the screen, I tend to lose my visual connection with all the dynamic input that happens, if that makes sense. So when I have a ton of lines like this, and I'm doing my dynamic input, I feel like my dynamic input gets obscured by the lines. So I don't like that. I don't have a great visual connection with it. Whereas for me, I like being able to come down to the command line, which is off my drawing board, right? I move my eyes to my command line, and I like having that visual connection where I can see very precisely what I'm going to input, right? If I type 8,8 down there, I can see 8,8, and nothing is obscured in my command line. So that's how I work, right? That's my comfort level. But if you like the dynamic input, use it. If you like the keyboard typing in ordered pairs, use it, right? Whatever is most comfortable for you, use that technique. And it's not wrong, right? You're going to end up with all of the same lines, essentially. But dynamic input is really just what I showed you. So if I wanted to complete this shape here using dynamic input, I can use various methods, but I'm going to type L for line, spacebar. And I'm going to create an absolute input to start this, 1, 1, enter. And I'm going to move this direction. You see my dynamic input is on. I'm going to type 3. Oop. Okay, here's one trick. All right, dynamic input is really smart, right? Do you see how when I typed 3, it kind of locked in that 3-degree angle? I don't really want a 3-degree angle right there, do I? So I'm going to tab, and I'm going to type 0. That was a mistake on my part because I moved my cursor up a little bit. If I had kept my cursor completely straight, it wouldn't have done that, okay? I'm going to move my cursor in this direction. See, it's at 45. I can visually see it. If it gets off a little bit, I could type 1.41, tab, 45, enter. Move in this direction. 1, 2, 3. 3, enter. 1, 2, enter. You guys get the idea, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, enter. And then we're moving this direction. See, it's 135 right there. So 1.41, tab, 135, enter. You guys get the idea, okay? So that's going to be the dynamic input. And again, if you don't like it, turn it off. If you love it, leave it on, right? But really, it's about your comfort level, okay? All right, any questions about dynamic input? Okay. Okay, so I think that's our lecture for today. I'm going to stop there, and like I said, I've said it 3 times. The booklet's being updated. It will be finished, and I'll have the updates by the end of the week. So I'll post the assignment for you when I get the updated booklet, and I'll post the course manual so that you can read it at the same time, okay? If you guys just breeze through the assignment and you finish it this weekend or whatever, right, in all your spare time on your long weekend, if you finish it this weekend, then we won't go over it next time. But if you don't finish it, I'll give you a little refresher, and we'll just move through it on Wednesday a little bit in addition to our new material, okay? Okay. Any final questions? Okay, guys.